Hello. Here's a crazy, fugly old mate again. Um, so a couple of little thought experiments were done today. As an alternative to just whinging randomly. So this is slightly better thought out. Here's a drawing for you. Okay, that one is a toaster labeled Blue Shield with a piece of toast coming out with Tony Abbott's face on it, and the bread is called Abbott's Bakery Thinly Sliced. So for Aussies, you know about Abbott's brand bread. No offense to the company. And they're having Nutella and margarine on toast. In case you don't know, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott of Australia, and his wife's name's Margie. And it's called the Tony Awards 2025 edition. Um, uh, oh bollocks! The bread hath gone mouldy. When is midnight? Presumably Margie says that, and Tony replies, after 7 p.m. as usual. And the labels say he's been deported back to the UK for selling unhealthy products and techno cheeses as toast. Anyway, so another one is there you go. So if you fraudsters out there, there's some handwriting samples. Anyway, smart. Anyway, so it's an old man and an old lady, and they're watching the TV, and the old man's crying, wearing a t-shirt that says Elvis lives on, because you know all the Elvis fans are old men now. And the lady on the news is saying, and the UN General Assembly held a vote and said that Trump's values were inconsistent with a modern future where all people get fair and just treatment before the law and standard of living. And that policy forcing women into marriage or preventing free choice over their bodies was a crime against humanity, and there are already conventions. Abuse of the women and gender inequality is now against international law, and it has been for decades. And they issued a formal apology as a global community. And the old woman says, "Oh wow, there's even a young lady saying it on TV." And the old man says, "Remember when Ma said her cousin was a comfort woman during the war? Times they've changed. She finally gets justice." And the old lady says, "Old ladies used to police young ladies and reinforce that shit too." And the old man says, "Yeah, and old men and younger men." The old guy goes, old men against Trump for the win." And the old lady says, "Maybe those hooligans can ride their skateboards as a sign of freedom." And the old man goes, "Sure, why not?" This one's a bit sillier. Anyway, the texter isn't working properly, so this one's a thought experiment of if there was a conversation between this physical body and Elon Musk, basically. And Elon Musk says, this is just completely made up, okay? So Super Geek, do you want to ride a rocket to Mars, or do you just want a quickie, or how about we just get married? Never seen anything like it. Your stories are a reminder of Justine, your semi-goth like Tallulah. You got genuine science and political cred and more warrior moves than the global armies, and and you fought them and won. The handwriting's not really clear. And the reply would be, immaterial non-self polygelism. Actually, the plot doesn't come in. He still carries on for a bit. You even were able to use multiverse theory to do it with genuine magic. You prove Curtis Yarvin's so wrong, it's not even funny. The reply would be, Curtis Yarvin is a dickhead, so no problem. Sir, do you think Antifa would pork the guy that did a Nazi salute on MLK Day? Not even for $400 billion, sir. He says, your rejection based on ethics is attractive. And then the statement was, dude, Elon, you were friends with Gina and you're talking to the mortal remains of a tent embassy activist. Like, don't. Perhaps that's a statement of some kind of well, he says, no, serious, Ensign and ANCAP should date. So the idea take that from what you want with it. You'll probably take it all kinds of freaky ways. And don't bother. So what was the original idea? Okay, the original idea of this video was less creepy like than that. But it is genuinely the case that wouldn't shag him for $400 billion, and or even 20 cents, or any reason, what's really funny is, like, perceptions can change, like, after you do a picture, and the perception changed to someone singing, you ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine. Elvis lives on, yeah, okay. Don't know what that was for, but anyway. So, what's the idea? The idea is that the idea of the Trump type character being representative of how all old men feel is crap. Even though the cultural tendencies from the 1940s and 50s, yada yada yada, blah blah blah, and issues that we're still working on, like lots of them, on the misogyny front, exist. That is still technically the case. Because men typically do have empathy, even that guy. But he just thinks it's weakness. So anyway, maybe he thinks he's a weak bastard if he's actually got any. I'm not sure he actually does. Anyway, so then we don't really know. So on the subject of sort of the idea is that maybe the sort of like 4chan type characters, which are terrorists, probably listen to Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate and think women are about, pretty dresses or something. But they might out-geek the king of the geeks. Like if there was ever a Sheila, right? If there was ever a Sheila, perhaps more than one Sheila, right, that just so happened to out-geek the kings of the geeks, I probably should have predicted that reaction. Anyway, just hypothetically, right? Right? To out-geek the kings of the geeks, there'd be some serious male competition coming from the male geeks, right? they'd all be fucking competing like you would not fucking believe. No, no, he's more fucking goddamn fucking D&D than you, right? Yeah. Okay, he's the greatest dungeon master of them all. No, not that other one. Okay, but at that point you're thinking it's about, nerd love, right? It's not really. It's actually about anarcho-syndicalism punching anarcho-capitalism in the face. Because anarcho-capitalism didn't follow its anarcho principles of being anti-oppression and started to weasel its way into fascism territory. The obvious consequence of that would be that anarcho-syndicalism or anarcho-communism would just come with, oh yeah, let's NFR you. So actually, it's nerd warfare. So that qualifies as a story about nerd warfare actually more than anything else. One of the acts of warfare in that case is the presumption that a bloke who has social status of some kind um, 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 would even stand a chance, like under certain types of socio-political or ethical conditions, is a broad-based lie. But it's also the case that if you look at some of the elements of that story, it might be the case that, were it true, that the nerd female in the story would have outgeeked him a little bit, and so the sort of classist warfare. See, classism as a form of discrimination doesn't work on someone like that. The female in the story, classism doesn't work. They're not motivated by money, power, status, perceived or actual authority. They're not motivated by stuff like that. They're motivated by something else completely. And a guy like that struggles to comprehend that because he spent his life gaining money, gaining power, gaining status. And so classism comes into effect with someone like that because they turn around and go, oh, well, that's what probably was. Oh, that was Cinderella, right? Right, so you go through so with a thought experiment, you go through the Cinderella part. What would that guy do? Cinderella. Yeah, no. Okay, what would the activist do? No. No. The activist is not Cinderella. Okay, there goes classism. Classism didn't work. Okay, racism didn't work because of the anti-racist activity. So that particular form of terrorism, it gets resisted, and then so they went straight for sexism, which is, well, that makes you attractive. He's a man of ethics, you see. So he admires your ethics. That's what he finds attractive. So he's still going for the assumption that he's bangable, that women are for banging in that story, right? He hasn't, in the story, in that example, that idea hasn't, that thought experiment, hasn't stepped away from gender relations having some kind of connotation. Okay? And that is problematic because even if there were a circumstance where that would be appropriate, it's not the nature of the relationship in that story. The nature of the relationship in that story is straight up geek warfare, involving things like magic, politics, things like that. And so, even if they presented some kind of false war between each other to go against a greater foe, um, they would still be engaging in geek warfare. And so that is not the appropriate context for that type of response. It is a example of this experience that some women have with certain kinds of men, which is that she even wants to be seen as attractive at all, or that there's something wrong with her if she doesn't. That his particular vision of what an ideal man is holds any water with anyone else. It doesn't. Even if you're a Trekkie who liked SpaceX rockets, no, not SpaceX rockets. No, not SpaceX. Space exploration is probably more accurate. So what's out there? How does the universe work, or the multiverse, or whatever? Blah 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 blah. General, interest in philosophy, whatever it might be. The basis of the relationship there is not dating. It's politics. And politics means it's all business. And so even if there were a very strange situation where that might be an option, it's not really, because politics is the game. You talk about in Ancom versus NCAP and whatever else, and Doji this and bloody blah 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 that. It's like the values of there's no guarantee that one geek will be attracted to another just because they've out-geeked them. There needs to be ethics. Lots of it. Wealth doesn't matter. Status doesn't matter. Intelligence doesn't matter. Appearance doesn't matter. Even the possibility of becoming an astronaut and going to outer space doesn't matter. Ethics matters. And ethics says that if you're at work, you don't grab her ass, no matter how hot that ass is. Or you don't grab his ass either. No matter how hot each other's butts are, no matter how much you admire each other's work, or in her case, doesn't really admire his at all, then you'd probably find that that's workplace harassment. Okay, so is that thought experiment about the idea of does those kind of attitudes contribute to maybe were there women at one of his companies that were asked if they wanted to ride a rocket to Mars, and that was a euphemism for something else. So what's the point of all that? Well, the point of all that is that in the American stereotype that we get presented with of nerds versus geeks, jocks, nerds versus jocks, which doesn't really represent how people behave in other countries anyway. There isn't that much of a nerd versus jock battle in other countries, like Australia, for example. There's just people, bullying happens and stuff as well, but it's not a nerd versus jock stereotype type of thing. They haven't created Revenge of the Geeks style society where there's a literal nerd, right, for fuck's sake. There's some kind of weird peculiarity associated with the United States media landscape kind of thing.
So there's no favouring of the man because he's a nerd. There's no nerd versus jock thing. There's no. Elon Musk is a fucking dickhead because he fucking supported Hitler. Because he gave $400 million to Donald Trump. And that's working out so great at the moment, isn't it? Okay? So, the point there to you fortuners out there is that you need to comprehend that the media landscape that you've been served up on a plate, okay, including cult symbolism, conspiracy theories, and all manner of toxic shit, is not the truth. Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson are lying to you. They're lying to you, especially Andrew Tate. Those kind of characters don't understand that. See, for Mr. Musk, some people think he's brave because he once said, you can take away all his money and he'll say what he wants. Well, that's all well and fucking good. He could pay a lawyer to defend him in defamation and slander cases as well. The rest of the community can't do that. You try and speak in your mind freely and openly while you're living in a tent or a swag. Okay? At that point, you might realise you've got nothing to lose, but what's left is dignity, which is your free speech. That being said, it's very easy to try and claim courage when you're sitting upon the steeple crapping on the people. Courage, political courage, is not so easy when you have no resources, when you have fluctuating support systems. So you'll have support, but maybe if you're a traveller, you're in a new town, you don't know those people there, and all your friends are in the other towns that you've already been to, or whatever. Okay? It's very easy to assume courage when, you know, you're literally, you know, the hands, the cards the hands you've got, the cards you've got are the whole deck. Like the guy's sitting there with the whole deck of cards, and he just pulls out the cards he wants. He goes, well, he'll say whatever he likes, and he doesn't care if he loses his cards. Like his mindset's unrealistic. He thinks he can just buy a new deck. Okay? If you haven't got a deck of cards, even to play, if you're running around, you could be arrested by the police, or you could be attacked by the military, depending on what situation you're in, or any number of things. Strangers in public, inclement weather, your own mistakes, perhaps. Maybe that's more courageous. Maybe here's an example of real courage. Shay Francis. Okay? Jason Cooper had spent 18 months in prison for putting her body in a garbage bin. Okay? The circumstances surrounding the fact that her remains have gone missing are sus, like really sus. Like as in murder sus. And chances are, if that's the case, that she was terrified. A person who is stuck in an environment where they are terrified and chooses to be a good person and honest and diligent day after day after day, week after week after week, month after month after month, year after year after year, is the truly courageous one. Anyone, male or female, who survived domestic violence, you are more courageous than Elon Musk will ever be. And he, too, survived domestic violence, he says, that he witnessed between Errol and May. Some people think it's courageous to say what you like on TV. But when you own the TV station, or you own Twitter, when you own the public relations company and pay them to say whatever you want them to say, that you can present whatever press release you like at any time you feel like, so that you appear this way or that way, to use propaganda, marketing and spin to benefit you. But people who are in bizarre, toxic situations don't get to do that so easily. They get smeared, they get slandered, they get attacked, they get cursed. And every day they stand up and they say, no, that's not okay. We're going to fix this. Day after day after day. And that is courage. And that is ethics. And to anyone in the world that ever had to do that, you're the truly brave ones. You're braver than that man will ever be. And $400 billion is not enough to compensate you for the sin that was committed against you. Be well.